Welcome back to another episode of Profitable Publishing. Today we're going to be talking about why your marketing should actually happen before your publishing. And this came up because literally every day online I see people ask the same questions of how do I sell my book? How do I market my book? How do I get people to buy my book? And through conversations, I find that part of this is because most independently published authors, most self-published authors, they're really using marketing as an afterthought as opposed to something that is the driving force in their publishing, in their drafting process, in their outlining process. I just want to flip that on its head. I want to remind you that really marketing should be something that happens before your book is even written. I was scrolling on Threads and the person who posted it said, no one tells you most of publishing is letting people know your book exists. And that is absolutely the truth. Absolutely the truth. A lot of your time as an author, after you've written your book and everything beyond that, you are spending most of your time telling people that your book is out there, getting them to purchase it, things of that sort. But imagine if you were able to do that before your book is out. Imagine if you were able to create raving fans before your book came out and have people come on the journey with you. And that is one of the benefits of using marketing to your advantage before your book is released. So instead of making an afterthought of like, okay, I just got to draft my book, I just got to get my edits done, I just have to do this one next step, I want you to broaden your mindset and really consider the fact that if you were to prioritize marketing and make it something that you're able to start to kind of dip your toe into while you are publishing, while you're drafting, while you're outlining, it actually makes the rest of the process a lot smoother. And I'm going to explain to you why that's the case. When it comes to most authors that I encounter, authors I've worked with, authors that I see online because I'm a moderator in different spaces, the sentiment is typically, I'm going to write my book and then I'm going to think about marketing. And I get that concept. I get that it can be overwhelming or it can be something that is a lot on your plate if you are running a business, if you're speaking, if you're coaching your own clients, if you're consulting with your own clients, then it might feel like, okay, I can only do one thing at a time. And that is true. However, when you are doing those things I just mentioned, when you're creating your services, when you are deciding, okay, I'm going to pitch this organization to speak at, you hopefully are doing some type of market research before you actually decide to write out your speech or before you decide to develop an entire offer around something for an audience. Because you know that if you were to do that blindly without going into any type of consideration, any type of research, any type of conversations with people who are in those spaces, that you run the risk of creating something that nobody wants. And as a business owner, as a coach, consultant, speaker, you don't really have time to do that. And so you want to make sure that the things you're creating actually are going to align with what your audience wants. And one of the best ways to do that is to do your market research before you start your publishing and preferably before you actually start outlining and drafting your book. So instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to write my book, publish it, and then market it, I want to encourage you to remember the words of the great lyricist Missy Elliott and think, okay, put that thing down, flip it, and reverse it. Okay, we're going to focus on our marketing before we finish our publishing because it makes a huge impact. So the first one is to understand your audience. When you are at the phase of thinking, okay, I want to write a book to help this group of people, doing market research, having conversations with those folks, understanding how they operate and the things that make them tick, the things that they are looking for, the types of support that they need is a huge benefit to your book because it means that you understand who they are, you understand what battles they are facing, you get that they might be struggling with something, and your book is going to be the bridge that helps to accelerate their transformation. Now that might also look like after they read your book, that they might reach out to you for services or they might ask you to come and speak at their organization. All that's possible. However, you understand the group that you are focusing on, or if it's an individual, the individual that you're focusing on. And that means that when it comes to designing your book, when it comes to actually deciding what to include in your book, all of that is infinitely easier because you know who the book is for. And not just who the book is for in terms of saying, okay, my book is for women in business. That's still pretty broad. Maybe your book might be for women in business who are tax professionals. That's if we get more specific to that. Tax professionals for small businesses that do X number of money or X number of revenue per year, that they're going to have certain needs, certain desires, certain issues that another group might not have. And so when you understand your audience, you can create a book that benefits them and makes it so that they really feel like you are in their head and that you really understand them. It's important to remember that marketing your book doesn't just look like putting up posts on social media after your book is out. It doesn't just look like asking people to buy your book. It's not an afterthought. It's something that should be intentional. It's something that should be done as you are designing the book, as you are drafting the book, or even before that, because you don't want to spend all of this time and energy creating something that doesn't really fit the needs of the person that you're trying to attract. Because at that point, it's a waste of time. And it also means that when you get to that marketing that's on the back end of your book, it's a lot harder to market a book that doesn't really fit what the person needs. It can also work to boost your confidence, because if you've already written a book, you know that imposter syndrome likes to sneak on in. It likes to tell you that you're doing things wrong. It likes to tell you that people aren't going to like this thing. But if you already know ahead of time, if you already know from jump that, okay, I did my research, I spoke to X number of people, I spent time in these groups to be able to listen in on conversations, not in a creepy way. I've done what Ashley has said on episode 7 of Profitable Publishing, the podcast, or in her book in chapter 5. I've done the research and I understand how to find my reader. Then as you're writing your book, it's a lot easier to know what to put inside of your book so that your reader is attracted to that book, so that they have a higher likelihood of leaving you a positive review from reading your book. And it just really boosts your confidence. And so instead of being in your head and debating, okay, is this what my reader needs? You have a deeper understanding. You have a better idea of what they might like. And so I want you to also think about when you're scrolling on social media, or just really anywhere now, even on your TV. I've seen ads pop up if you have things like YouTube TV or all the other streaming apps and stuff. And imagine that you see an ad that pops up and it's for a very specific thing that you didn't know that you needed or that you didn't know existed. And so one thing I keep seeing is these earbuds that fit in people's ears that have smaller ears. And like, that's me. I didn't know that was a thing, that they had different size earbuds. And then also they are like flesh tone, so they have different skin tones. And they have like brighter colors too. They're also waterproof. And so like me, like I typically don't wear earbuds just because I like to have wired headphones. And then also I'm worried about like it falling in the sink if I'm doing dishes, or like if I'm washing my hands and I have them in, or whatever the case may be. And also just the regular size ones just literally fall out of my ears. And so I don't know how the ad found me. I haven't expressed any of that online whatsoever, but it found me. And so I'm like, oh, this is for me. Like, they're marketing to me. And then also I have a fear of like losing them because they're so small. And so I don't have like the Apple AirPods. And so with this particular company, you get 2 pairs for the price of 1. And so I'm like, oh, you really have thought of all the things, because if I lose it, then like, okay, I'm gonna need a replacement. And so all of that happens because of whatever my actions have been online, or whatever things that have tracked. And really it's because that company either did market research or they compiled information. You also will see online where it says cookies, like manage cookies, that's tracking information as well. And so you don't always have that as a benefit to be able to use that on your site. However, you could if you have pixels. There is different tracking that you can do, but you want to make sure that you're including some type of market research for your potential audience. You can have those conversations with them, or be in communities where those conversations are had, or be in rooms where those conversations are had, and really find out those types of questions that are going to benefit you when you're writing your book. And so that could look like following up on questions that someone posts on your content, or in your email. It could be discovering where do they like to hang out, what kind of things do they prefer to do on the weekends, what kind of stage are they in life, how are the things that you're selling or the things you're creating going to benefit them, and what is it that they're really looking for? What is it that they're looking for that's going to help them to feel the most supported? And so all of those are things that are different types of market research that you can do. And so once again, if you haven't already listened to episode 7, I do a deep dive of how to find your audience and questions to ask them. But the second reason is So the second reason is you can actually use that information to help you to create your book. And I've hinted at this earlier, but directly telling you, you should use the information that you find about the community that you are supporting, the individual you're supporting, because once you know who that audience is and once you understand how they are experiencing the issue that they're having, then that means your book becomes the answer to that issue or becomes something that becomes the bridge to your services or to your speaking, whatever your offer is that you're selling. And your book can really work to address those frequently asked questions. It can work to help you to not be as fatigued, because if people are often asking the same questions over and over again, then that means that that's something that's a hot button issue or it's a hot topic that people really need support with. Then that also lets you know, okay, well, once they're done with the book, they might need an additional service with me. They might need a group coaching program. They might need a 6-month individual coaching container. They might need something else to support them. Your book is basically going to help broaden their perspective and open their eyes to something that they didn't see had a solution. Or if your book is written in a slightly different way, it could be the exact steps, step by step, steps 1 through 6, 1 through 5, whatever the case may be, of how to actually have that transformation. Because maybe they don't need to come to you for the additional service. Maybe you're able to fulfill that with your book. It just depends on how you've structured it. But part of that goes back to knowing your audience. Are they the type of person who is going to be someone who can just sit and read a book and do the steps themselves and have the transformation? Or based on your research, based on your marketing research, are they going to be the person who's like, I need some accountability. I need you to walk side by side with me on this. I need to get some support and feedback with this. And so all that goes back to really understanding your audience. And it also gives you a way to be able to come up with new ideas for books. And so I've mentioned this in previous videos before, but for my Daniel Fast devotional, I was getting reviews that said, this is not a cookbook, and I'm disappointed because I thought it was a cookbook. And to me, I thought, okay, well, clearly this is not a cookbook because it says journal across the front. And then you can see the preview, and I'm thinking in the description it doesn't say anything about being a cookbook. Now, I could have just taken offense to that, but I decided, you know what? Well, I guess I'm going to do a cookbook. And so that gave me a new idea to be able to branch out to a different product offering. But that wouldn't have happened had I not done continual research understanding my audience. And so you want to consider that, because it's so important when you are drafting your book, publishing your book, even after your book is released, because at that point that book was already done. But that actually became market research for the next book. And so it became something where I thought that the chapter was closed on that book, and then it opened up a new chapter for the book that was following that. So then that led me down the path of continuing that research for the next book, to be able to ask those types of questions of what would you like to see? What type of format would you like to have for a cookbook? What do you prefer in your cookbooks? Now, warranted in that case, I had an existing audience from the devotional, and so I knew the cookbook was pretty closely aligned to be able to ask that same group of people. However, other books that I published, I didn't have an audience because I've written in multiple genres, and so each time it's kind of like starting over. So don't feel as if you can't use these strategies if you haven't already had an established audience, or if you are shifting to a slightly different industry. You can still ask people, you can still research, you can still show up in these spaces. Okay, then our third one is to really think about bringing your reader along for the process. And so this is one that I hear from many in the author space who are like, well, I don't know if my readers would be interested in hearing kind of the boring, mundane tasks that I do on a day-to-day as a writer, or my book's not done, so I can't share it with people. And I just want to say that we are in a society where people want to see they want to see the real deal. They want to see authenticity. They want to see behind the scenes. And it might be hard to believe, but most people are not authors. If you're in author spaces, if you are a business owner, you probably feel like everybody has a book at this point. Like, it's a dime a dozen, but it's really not. Everybody doesn't have a book. The larger majority of the population does not have a book. And also, the larger majority of the population who doesn't have a book, they also don't have a book that's specific to their branding, that's providing a transformation to their reader. And so you bringing your reader along for the process helps give them a behind the scenes look. It helps them to really be some of your ride or dies, some of your raving fans during the book launch process. And even before that, even just announcing that you're writing a book, that's actually and one of the pieces of homework that we do inside of the Pre-Order Profits Challenge. And the feedback that people get just from announcing I'm writing a book without even telling people what it's going to be about. People are excited to support you. And so when that becomes a part that's embedded into your drafting process, that's embedded into your publishing process, it also helps boost your confidence. It helps you to feel like, okay, I'm not doing this by myself. I'm not just creating this thing alone in isolation. I have people who are here supporting me before I even have anything out. And so another strategy to use is to actually put your reader inside of the book. And so this looks like sharing something that they might learn from the book if your book is showing them a transformation, and actually helping them to get that small win before they actually buy the book. So for example, I shared my process of getting feedback from covers from profitable publishing pre-orders. And inside of the book, I share that I use that within the beta reader process, and I give the exact steps that I use. And so that's also something I shared on a social media post to actually show people that it's happening in real time. So using one of my cover designs and then showing like how I get feedback from people, because people want to understand your systems and they want to understand your processes. And when you actually show that you use your own steps, it helps people feel like, okay, they know what they're talking about and they're not just making up stuff. They didn't just get this off of Chatty or Claude or whoever. They came up with it themselves, and or they've tailored it to where they've actually tested out the strategy, and I'm watching them in real time test out the strategy. And so that just improves your credibility, because if you're showing people, okay, this is the transformation I've had, this is how I'm able to get my results, and then I'm showing you step by step how to get my results, and I'm actually doing it in real time, it makes it so much easier for people to trust you and to follow along with your process. And they also want to see you win. And so it's very endearing. On the opposite end of the spectrum, it's okay to share your lows. It's okay to share your setbacks. It's okay to let folks know that you are a human, that you do other things besides being an author. And all of this is rolled into marketing. All of this becomes something that people start to understand, people start to remember about you. And then when it comes time to sell your book, it's like, oh, okay, I remember that I have 2 sons. I remember that one likes to cook with her. Well, the second one does too now, but I remember that one cooks with her. And so when I give different anecdotes and different stories, they might be woven into the book, but it's also at the end of the day showing them that like I'm a real person and I have a personality, and I'm not just going to be asking you to buy my book. So all of that works together to be able to support you in your overall marketing goals, because people see you as a whole complete person. And this is actually a strategy that I just had a client do the other day, literally less than a week ago. She shared 4 covers with her audience and asked them to pick which one, and she shared it on both Facebook and Instagram. And when I say the comments were blowing up, because people literally wanted to give their opinions, they were already excited she was releasing a book. She let them know ahead of time, and then it was like almost a cover reveal, but also like a hey, I need your help. And that's a process that if you're designing your cover in isolation, if you are making those decisions yourself, then you're missing out on adding potential people who might not have bought your book before into the fold. They could either be like, I didn't know this was happening, but I'm invested now. It could be, I have been waiting on this and I'm excited. And in her case, she did do an announcement video, so people knew that she was releasing a book. But we know with the algorithm, things change and people might not see everything. And so it's just a great way to bring folks in. And so at the end of the day, she's going to tally those results. She's going to get that feedback, and then she's going to take that back to her cover designer to select the final cover. And then she's going to have an opportunity to re-reveal and say, okay, this is the one that won. And so doing this helps you to get feedback in a way that is pretty casual, where it's not so much attention on you, it's on the book. And then also to help people feel like they are a part of the process. And so with that, of course, there is a science to doing it properly, to make sure you're not getting too much feedback, and to make sure that people are only giving feedback on the specific items that you want them to do. And that's actually something that I share inside of my service, Profitable Publishing Partner. And so we walk through this process of understanding how to really embed your marketing into your drafting, your publishing, and your release process, so that way you're not waiting until the end when your book is finished to start asking people to purchase it. And so if that's something you're interested in, then I want you to visit profitableselfpublishing.com/partner, and I'll put the link in the show notes for you to check it out, to book a call and see if it is a good fit for you. And then one thing I want to address is that maybe you're thinking, okay, well, Ashley, you said that I should start this process before my book is out, and I have not done that. And so is it still possible? It is still possible. Maybe you're in the part where you got your proof back or you are fully published, but you can still do this in a retroactive way. So it can be where you're speaking in past tense, still sharing your journey, still letting people know. Didn't really take people on the journey, and I want to do that now. Now, of course, if you have already written your book completely and you haven't interviewed or you haven't done market research, it's still a good idea to do it. And it may be that maybe you release a second edition of your book, or maybe you're able to make tweaks so that it fits and aligns with what your audience is actually looking for. Because it's so important to really make sure that you remember that your book is for your audience, not necessarily just for you. So to recap today's episode, we focused on why marketing your book is so important to start before you publish. And the first reason is because it helps you to understand your audience on a deeper level. The second reason is that you can then use the information you found to be able to build a book out that they love. And then the third reason is that you can bring your readers along for the process because you understand who they are, and you also will be able to show up for them even before your book is done. And so until next time, thank you for listening and stay profitable.